in a wheelchair. Just weeks ago, he could silence a room with one look. Now he could not even stand to stop her. Instead of a kiss, she placed the ring on the table. "I wanted a husband," she said. "Not a burden." She turned and walked away, her heels echoing down the cold hospital hallway. He did not call after her. He could not. The door closed. The silence that followed was louder than any gunshot that had put him in that bed. But this was not the end of his story. It was only the beginning. Weeks later, in a room full of powerful men, a folder would slam onto a table. Bank records. Secret recordings. Proof of a betrayal no one saw coming. An uncle's face would turn pale. A quiet woman, once ignored by everyone in that house, would stand tall and speak the truth out loud. And the man everyone had written off would walk back into that room on his own two legs. But first, we have to go back to where it all began. Then the screen cut to black. Before we go further, have you ever been left behind when you needed someone the most? If that has ever happened to you, drop a black heart in the comments right now. Let's see how many of us have felt this same pain. Keep watching, it only gets even more intense. Kang Do-hyun was not a man people loved. He was a man people feared. He ran one of Korea's most powerful mafia families. One word from him could end a business or a life. Rivals whispered his name like a warning. Even his own men kept their eyes down when he walked past. But behind the fear, there was a lonely man. Kang trusted almost no one. He grew up watching people smile to his face and steal behind his back. So he built a simple rule for his whole life: loyalty is the only currency that matters. Everything else, money, power, fame, could disappear overnight. Loyalty, he believed, was the one thing that could not be bought. There were only two people he let past that wall. The first was Soo-jin. Elegant. Graceful. Always by his side at dinners, parties, and quiet nights when the pressure of running an empire felt too heavy. To Kang, she was proof that his rule had one exception. He believed she was different. He believed she would stay, no matter what came. The second was his uncle, Min-jae. The man who had stood beside him since Kang was young, who called him nephew, but treated him almost like a son. Kang trusted him with company secrets, bank accounts, and decisions that could shape the family's future for generations. Their wedding was only weeks away. Kang, a man who controlled criminal empires without blinking, found himself nervous over flower colors and guest lists. It was strange to see him this way, soft, hopeful, almost ordinary. He believed his empire was finally safe. His woman was chosen. His right hand was trusted completely. He had built his whole world on two people. He never imagined that one small crack, hidden in plain sight, could bring the entire thing crashing down. The mansion buzzed with wedding preparations. White flowers lined the hallways. Soo-jin walked from room to room, choosing fabric, lighting, and the exact shade of white that would look best beside Kang's dark suits. "When you're chairman," she said one evening, adjusting his tie, "not just air, everyone will finally see what I always saw in you." Kang smiled and said nothing. He did not notice how her eyes lingered on the word chairman longer than they lingered on him. Around the same time, a new face joined the household staff. Her name was Amara Bello. She had been working in the mansion for only 3 months. She was quiet, careful. She did her job well and never asked for attention. Most people in the house barely noticed her at all. That was exactly how she liked it. Late one night, a maid passed the study and noticed Min-jae still inside, long after everyone else had gone to sleep. He was bent over company documents, moving papers quickly, checking numbers no one had asked him to check. It was strange, but no one thought much of it. He was family. He was trusted completely. Small things. Easy to miss. Easy to explain away. The wedding countdown continued. Guests confirmed their invitations. The mansion glowed with lights each evening as workers prepared the garden for the big day. Kang stood on the balcony one night, looking over the grounds that would soon host his wedding. For the first time in years, he felt something close to peace. His empire was strong. His woman was loyal. His family stood behind him. He had no idea that within days, everything he trusted would turn against him. The night before the ambush, the house was calm. Sujin slept peacefully in her room. Min-jae reviewed his secret plans one final time. And Amara, quiet as always, finished her work and went to bed, unaware that her entire life was about to become tangled with his. Nobody in that mansion knew that this was the last normal night any of them would ever have. The car moved fast down the coastal road, headlights cutting through the dark. Kong sat in the back seat, checking messages on his phone, thinking about wedding plans, not danger. Then the first bullet hit the window. Tires screeched. Metal crashed into metal. Masked men surrounded the car before the driver could even react. Gunfire cracked through the night. Glass shattered. Kong tried to reach for his weapon, but a second car rammed into his door, throwing him hard against the frame. Everything went black. When his men found him, he was barely breathing, blood soaking through his shirt, his body twisted at an angle that made even hardened men look away. He survived. That was the miracle. But at the hospital, the surgeon's words landed like a second attack. The spinal damage is severe, the doctor said, avoiding Kang's eyes. He may never walk again. News like that does not stay quiet in a world like his. Within days, distant cousins began quietly moving money out of shared company accounts. Bodyguards who had sworn loyalty for years resigned by letter, refusing to even face him. One by one, the people who once bowed to his name disappeared from his life completely. Then Sujin came to visit. She stood at the door for a long moment before stepping inside. Her eyes moved to the machines beside his bed, to the wheelchair folded in the corner, to anything except his face. Her hand touched the ring on her finger, twisting it slowly, as if already deciding what to do with it. Kong noticed. Some small, tired part of him already knew. "You came," he said softly. She did not answer right away. "You can already feel where this is going, can't you?" Comment stay, if you think loyalty should never depend on convenience. She finally looked at him. Not with love. Not even with pity. With something colder, calculation. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. Kang's chest tightened. The machines beeped steadily beside him, the only sound in the room besides her voice. Whatever she was about to say, he already sensed it would hurt more than the bullet ever did. Sujin reached down, slid the engagement ring off her finger, and placed it gently on the table beside his untouched dinner tray. "I wanted a husband," she said, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. Not a burden. Kong stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to say she didn't mean it. She didn't. "You built an empire," she continued, "but look at you now. You can't even stand. I didn't sign up to push a wheelchair for the rest of my life." He tried to speak, but his throat closed around the words. He had no strength to rise from that bed, no legs to chase after her, no way to stop what was already happening. She turned and walked out of the room without looking back. Outside, in the hallway, a well-dressed businessman waited for her, offering his arm. She took it without hesitation, the two of them disappearing down the corridor together, her heels clicking against the tile like a countdown. The door clicked shut behind her. Back at the mansion, the mood was very different. Relatives who once bowed their heads to Kang now gathered around the dinner table, laughing, pouring wine, dividing his company like an inheritance already settled. "He's finished," one cousin said, raising his glass. "It's time someone competent took over." Papers were signed without Kang's knowledge. Contracts were altered. Doors that once opened wide for him now stayed locked, guarded by people he used to trust completely. Back in the hospital, night fell over Kang's room. No visitors came. No phone calls. No flowers, no cards, no sound except the steady beep of machines keeping him alive. The lights were dimmed low, casting long shadows across the empty chairs beside his bed, chairs that should have been filled with people who claimed to love him. Kang lay there in silence, staring at the ceiling, replaying every promise once made to him. Every "I'll always stay." Every "no matter what happens." Words that meant nothing now. For the first time in his life, the man who once made grown men tremble with a single glance felt utterly, completely powerless. He was alone. And nobody was coming. Amara never treated him like something broken. Every morning, She helped him into his wheelchair with steady hands, never rushing, never sighing at the effort. Every evening, she pulled a chair beside his bed and read to him old novels, quiet poems, stories about men who lost everything and found their way back. Her voice was soft, steady, the only comfort in a house gone cold. One afternoon, she pushed his wheelchair to the window and opened the curtains wide. "You still deserve to see the sky," she said simply, and left him there in silence, sunlight warming his face for the first time in weeks. She defended him in ways he never even saw. Once, she overheard two nurses whispering outside his door, mocking the fallen boss and his shaking hands during therapy. Amara stepped into the hallway, voice low but sharp. "Watch how you speak about him." The nurses fell silent and never whispered again. Slowly, something in Kong began to shift. He found himself listening for her footsteps. He started smiling, small at first, then real. Then, one night, everything changed. Passing the study, Amara heard Min-jae's voice through the door, low and certain. "Handle it quietly," he said, "before the boy recovers." She froze. Her heart pounded. In that instant, she understood the ambush had not come from rivals at all. It had come from Kang's own blood. She said nothing the next morning. She smiled at Min-jae the same as always. But in secret, she began collecting proof, photographs of bank transfers, a burner phone hidden behind a drawer, a voice recording saved onto an old memory card. Every piece gathered quietly, at great risk to herself. Not long after, Kong learned something that changed everything he understood about her. Years earlier, his father had collapsed during a business trip to Africa. A young doctor there had saved his life. That doctor was Amara's father. Before he died, Kang's father had quietly paid for Amara's entire nursing education, never telling her, or Kang, the connection between their families. Neither of them had walked into that mansion by accident. Fate had written this story long before they ever met. This is the moment everything shifts. If you think fate had already written their story long before they met, hit like and let me know. Months of therapy had brought almost nothing. Then, during a routine scan, doctors found it, a small piece of shrapnel from the ambush, pressed silently against his spine. Emergency surgery followed. Outside the operating room, the silence was heavy, the kind that comes only from people who've stopped expecting good news. Then his toes moved. Then his legs. The recovery stunned everyone who had already buried him in every way but literally. The day Kong returned to headquarters, he walked in on his own legs, eyes cold and controlled. Min-jae, caught off guard, tried one final move, rushing a vote among the elders, hoping to seize control before Kong could speak. He never finished his sentence. Amara stepped forward and placed a folder on the table. Bank transfers. A recorded phone call. Dates matching the night of the ambush, line by line. Min-jae's face turned pale. His voice faltered, searching for an explanation that never came. The elders did not hesitate. He was stripped of his position on the spot, removed from the family completely, justice arriving fast, cold, and final. News of Min-jae's downfall spread fast. And with it came another visitor. Soo-jin stood outside Kang's office, her confidence from months ago completely gone. The businessman she had chosen over him had already moved on to someone new, leaving her with nothing but the ring she once thought she'd traded up for. She walked in slowly, eyes red from crying. "Do-hyun," she said softly, "I made a mistake. Please, give me another chance." Kong looked at her for a long moment. Not with anger. Not even with the hurt he once carried. Just quiet clarity. "When I couldn't walk," he said, his voice calm and unhurried, "you walked away. When I stood again, you came back." He paused, letting the silence settle between them. "The door you closed will never open again." Soo-jin's eyes widened, searching his face for some crack, some hesitation. She found none. Kang had already made peace with the truth. Some people only stay when it's easy. Real loyalty shows up when it costs something. He turned from her and walked toward the door. Amara stood there waiting, quiet as always, saying nothing, expecting nothing. Kong reached for her hand. It was the same hallway from months before, the one Soo-jin had walked down after leaving her ring behind, the one Kang had once lain in, unable to stand, unable to stop her. This time, it was Kang walking, on his own legs, holding the hand of the one person who never once treated him like a burden. Sujin stood frozen behind them, watching the door close, not just on a relationship, but on a version of Kang who once believed love had to be earned through wealth and power. The empire he had almost lost was safe again. But something more important had also been restored, his belief that loyalty, real loyalty, still existed in the world. He just had to survive the worst of his life to find it. 1 year later, Kang Do-hyun walked without help, without a cane, without anyone holding him up. He had transformed his father's empire into something new, a legitimate international security company, built on protection instead of fear. At a grand celebration filled with hundreds of guests, he stood before them all and spoke of the woman who had once been just a quiet maid in his house. "She saved my life," he said. "And then she saved my heart." He knelt on one knee. Amara said yes. Their wedding made headlines across 2 continents, not because of the empire he once ruled, but because of what their story proved. The people who stay with you in your darkest days are the ones who deserve to celebrate your brightest moments. If this story moved you, tell me one word for how it made you feel. Subscribe if you want more stories about loyalty proving stronger than status. Share this with someone who stayed with you when it mattered most, the ones who never left, even when leaving would have been easier. See you in the next story.